Here we go. Welcome to Double Dribble Bucks. I am one of your hosts, Seth, and my friend Brett across the screen here. How you doing, Brett?
I'm doing okay, Seth. I think I could have been doing a little bit better after the recent road trip, but we'll dive into that in a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. We were hoping that they'd do a little bit better on the West Coast there. But first, let's get into something that a lot of podcasters, a lot of writers, a lot of conversation the past week about this supposed NBA unspoken rule change. Have you heard anything about this, or is this news to you as well?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I've heard something about an unwritten rule, but I'm not 100% sure where you're going with it yet.
So I think it started with Tom Haberstroh and Ethan Strauss, a couple of writers, sports writers. They were noticing that the offense has really plummeted since earlier in the season. So apparently the peak of offense was late January. And I don't have the numbers, but whatever it was, points per game, it was really high. And since then it's gone down, and especially since the All-Star game. And one of the key things that they noticed was that free throws are down about 3 shot attempts per game less. I think that was since the All-Star game.
Yes, I did think I saw something like that, yeah.
And so the conversation is that, something happened, that this didn't just naturally occur. So especially because there's a lot of complaining, not just the All-Star game. Before the All-Star game, there was that week where like 3 or 4 guys got like 60, 70 points. I think it was actually one day, 2 guys got 60 or 70 plus.
Yeah.
And then like 5 days later, 2 guys got 60 or 70 plus. It was like,
yeah, I think it was
Cat.
Embiid had 70. Luka followed up with 73, just 4 days later, and then Cat as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was like I think the first day was like, holy cow, like these guys getting 60, 70, that's crazy. And then 5 days later, like 2 guys did it, and they're like, what's going on? Like they did not get the same credit as the other 2. So yeah, there's just a lot of complaining, especially, with a lot of the real like NBA podcasters, talk show guys, whatever guys on ESPN. There's a lot of conversation about the offense is out of control, and this is the product isn't as good anymore. And like, we gotta do something here, or we're going to kind of lose what our game is. And so the thought is that the NBA kind of behind the scenes, talk to the refs, whatever happened. And we're like, we need to get the scoring down. We need to make this a better game. And I think the thing that it seems is they are calling that they used to call, kind of give the offensive player the benefit of the doubt. And they'd call a foul a lot of times when the offender essentially initiated contact. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be what's flipped a little bit. So think like Jalen Brunson, Trae Young, or maybe the 2 classics, 2 best examples that we can think of, where they're just kind of like throwing their body into these guys as they go to the rim and just kind of expecting a foul call.
Right.
And so they're not getting that call anymore. It's kind of supposedly what's happening. So you didn't know about that. Did you notice that? Does that sound like, oh yeah, I've noticed that? Or what do you think about that?
Well, it's funny. I did hear something about that, because I think when I heard it, someone made a joke about the fact that since Embiid wasn't playing, that's why free throws were down, implying that he was like getting extra calls or something like that. But it's interesting, like 2 of the things that you brought up, and I'll jump into this, is like the too much scoring, which is funny because that is something that I think the NBA was trying to get after. I just watched a recent clip of a Pacers Knicks game, and it was 4th quarter with like a minute left, 67-69. And it's like, that's just unheard of, now, now we're having some fluctuations. And it's true. I mean, if you look at even the Bucks, I mean, we maybe even talked about it before, like it's something like what Quick Trip gives you something if the Bucks hit 95 points in the 3rd quarter. Well, under Griffin, it was happening every single game. And now it's really not happening nearly as much. And it's funny. And one of the things I wanted to mention is I heard someone also recently say that they tried to watch a basketball game, a random game, and they couldn't do it. They thought it was so boring. They hated it. And it blew my mind, because it was like, I don't think I've ever watched basketball and thought this is not super entertaining. And even being older, it's like, I find it even more entertaining than I did. But hey, whatever. But, I guess there are all these players that are trying to get, these fouls, and they are happening a lot. I think if there was the recent game, and I forget the opponent, but Giannis is doing his patented move where he's driving to the rim, and if the guy doesn't have his feet set, he's going to lower his shoulder a little bit. He knows not to lower it too much, and he hit this guy, and he went flying. And this is like a big power forward center, whatever, runs into Giannis. The guy goes flying, and even had this look on his face on the replay of like, I can't do that again. But did it, good, no foul. There was no reason to call it foul. But I think that there is some times where situations where they would be getting those fouls, and it kind of impacted it way, way too much. The stat is surprising that it's been down that much, but I have kind of been noticing that a little bit, where they're maybe giving defense a little more credit for some of what they're doing.
Yeah. And I'm all for it because it's really difficult to play defense. And I don't, especially when the guy with the ball is initiating the contact on some of these plays. And it's just like, what can you possibly do as the defender sometimes? And if you look at a play and you're like, there's literally nothing else the defender could have done. Mm-hmm. Maybe we should call it differently, if that's kind of what's going on, and that sometimes that is what's going on. And so I'm thinking and hoping that those are the calls that are changing, and that they're going to, have a point of emphasis as calling a different way. And again, this is like behind the scenes. The NBA hasn't said anything.
Yeah, and I don't know if that we're going to go back to like the 80s and 90s where, there's a clip I saw where Isaiah Thomas literally got 12 stitches across his forehead. No foul was called on that one. It's like, I don't know how that happens. But on the flip side, like, I love Brook Lopez, but he is always complaining that he's getting fouled and they never want to give him calls. And maybe as they kind of play this out, they can figure out the good balance. But you got to have decent defense. There are players that are really good at defense, and you should reward them and not constantly penalize them, because then they're just going to be like, it's not even worth it. And then that's when I think the product gets out of hand, where it's like, there's no point of even playing defense because, the stars are going to get the calls and everything's going to get out of hand at that point. So I'll be interested to see how this unfolds, because I do want to pay attention to it more. 3 less free throws per game. That really is kind of significant. So I'm going to have to watch for that, which is weird because even tonight, DeMar DeRozan, I think, was 16 of 17 from free throws. So he was getting lots of calls. So maybe it's not happening everywhere.
Yeah, and then watching the Bucks games, they gave up, 78 points to the Warriors in the first half of that game. And then the most recent game, they gave up, I think, close to 70, if not 70, to the Kings in the first half. Mm-hmm. So the second half was better in that Kings game. But yeah, with these Bucks games we're watching, I haven't been noticing that, and it is kind of funny that under Griffin, apparently the whole NBA, the offense was like out of hand. Everyone was scoring everywhere. He gets fired January 23rd at like the peak of it. And then as the scoring goes down, that's when we get Doc. To give Doc credit, relative to the league, our defense has been much better. But still kind of a funny correlation there.
Yeah, hopefully it's not the Adrian Griffin ruined the NBA and let's just keep kicking this guy when he's down. But
yeah.
I'm sure that's not the case, but I guess that kind of would be funny if they're like, well, hey, ever since Adrian Griffin was gone from Milwaukee, the league has really turned around. It's just been amazing.
Let's focus on that change. Okay, well, this whole unspoken rule change that maybe hurts, guards that are driving to the rim kind of leads into one of my concerns. So now we're going to get into some of our concerns that we have with the Bucks. So we'll have a few of them, especially after this West Coast trip. But the first one I had is with Dame Lillard. And actually it kind of connects with what we talked about last week. Last week we talked about that rip through foul and how this year there's a new rule where they're not giving you the free throws if you're going side to side first. And he does that a decent amount, and he's not getting the free throws. And we mentioned it last week, how he's, frustrated, like he's expecting to get the call and he doesn't get it. And he's played 50 games now, and he's still having that same surprise that he doesn't get the free throw. And so that, in combination with possibly this new kind of rule change of sorts, and Dame will just drive down and throw up a bad shot and not get the call. Like he's just assuming he's going to get the call, and he doesn't always get it. And it seems like maybe now he's going to get it less than he would. And I guess my concern is, especially seeing how he hasn't seemed to have adjusted to the rip through foul. Like, can he make the adjustment, with the rip through, which we haven't really seen yet, and with refs not just giving him foul calls when he just goes to the rim and kind of throws his body in and think he's just going to get it. I guess that's my concern is he going to change his game a little bit, stop wasting possessions by throwing up these bad shots? The rip through is not the worst thing because it's just it's still a foul call. We keep possession of it. It's just that he's just complaining about it. But if he drives to the rim and just throws up a shot that has no chance, and he just assumes he's going to get a foul and he doesn't get it, if he does that 5 times a game, I mean, it's kind of like 5 turnovers. So I'm hoping he learns and adjusts as needed. And I would think in the playoffs, that kind of thing isn't going to be called anyways, whether they're making that real change now or not. I think in the playoffs, they do make that emphasis change. So, yeah, do you think he can adjust? Do you think he's made any adjustments this season so far?
I mean, I obviously think he can adjust. He's a smart player. He should be able to make the adjustment. I mean, there's also a reason there are guys on the bench that are watching film. They're looking at, all these different things. I mean, you look at the bench, these benches are bigger than I think I've recalled seeing in a while. It's like, 3 rows deep of coaches. Yeah, so they all have to have some job. So I'm hoping there's somebody looking at it being like, all right, here's what we got to make the adjustment on. The one thing I was thinking of, though, is I wonder if he is doing it in a smart way. I know giving it over, like the 5 turnovers, like you said, obviously is a huge deal. But with the way that challenges are used nowadays, if he is getting into a situation where he's always trying to get the call and he's trying to make the foul shot, you have some of these games where you find like a star NBA on a player on the other team early foul trouble. And if they call one on Dame early when he is doing this motion and he's going to the line, he's about to shoot, and they're giving the foul to a star, they're going to challenge that. And they could be wasting a challenge super early on some of those. So I don't know. I'm going to be interested to see it happen because you're right. He is still doing it. I'm hoping there's some reason behind it. He's not just a dumb guy that's just going to be like, well, I'm just going to keep doing it until you get it my way. There's got to be hopefully something to it. We are getting closer and closer to the playoffs, so I'm hoping that you see this change sooner than later. There are minor adjustments, and every time I think the Bucks are taking a step forward, I do think they're taking 2 steps back. And I don't know what that is, but I'm hoping it's part of some big philosophy change, and it's going to be part of some adjustment that we're going to see that's going to make a bigger difference. But I think he'll make a change, and I don't think we're going to see it as a long-term problem. I think he can adjust properly.
Well, I definitely hope so. And I guess we'll see if the refs even call it like that for the rest of the season. I guess we'll take a look at that. But this kind of rolls into the other concern that I had, which kind of changed throughout the week. So after that Lakers game, I took a note. Where is the Dame Giannis 2-man game? They did at the end of the Lakers game, they did it, but they did it like the last 4 minutes of that game, and that's pretty much it. And I was just like, why? And it was great. It was like working really well. I mean, we lost that game still, but I was thinking partially like, why are you not running this Dame Giannis stuff just throughout the game? Why save it for just the last 4 minutes? And so that was after the Lakers game. Next game is the Clippers game. All game, it's Giannis and Dame, like literally all game. And it was funny because I had that note in the Lakers game. So then the Clippers game started. First play, Giannis Dame. It was like a dribble handoff kind of a thing. And I started taking a note. I'm going to take a note of like every single time that they do it. Little did I know it was going to be a lot of what's up, like pick and roll. So my unofficial stats show that they ran a 2-man game of sorts where basically Giannis is coming up to set a pick or it's a dribble handoff. Or there was like one time Dame set a pick for Giannis. But anyway, 31 times throughout that game, I counted that they did a 2-man game. It was 7 dribble handoffs and 21 pick and rolls with Dame as the ball handler. And then they had like a slip here. A couple times Dame went the other way. But anyway, 21 pick and rolls, 7 dribble handoffs. Of the 31, 4 times it didn't directly turn into anything, positive or negative. It was kind of like kind of reset the play or whatever happened. But it wasn't like a turnover. It wasn't a missed shot. It was just kind of nothing. Twice Dame passed it and the Clippers kicked it out of bounds. Twice we were fouled, non-shooting foul. So that left 23 times where it was a Giannis Dame 2-man game that directly turned into something. 23 times we got 38 points and 1 turnover. That's awesome. That's like very good offense. And so, it's just one game. Maybe they were just awesome that game. Dame was hitting his 3. Dame was hitting his 3, but it just looks so natural when it's coming off that pick. And he just dribbles into it, pulls up. That feels like a better 3 than a lot of these other ones. That was awesome. So then I wasn't as concerned, or it's kind of making it more, it's giving me some optimism. Like they obviously had a huge emphasis on doing that before that game. Next game, the game starts, they do it like the first 2 possessions or something like that. Very early, it's like they did it a couple of times. But that game just got away from them very quickly. Yeah. And they did not really do, they didn't really do pick and rolls 2-man game for the rest of the game. And so did they just kind of get flustered and, were just trying to make stuff happen on their own? Or was it something that the defense was doing that prevented them? They were like, hey, this just isn't going to work today. I'm not sure what the answer is to that, but they ditched it and didn't really go back to it. And then the game got away, they didn't even play in the fourth quarter. But I guess just moving forward, like I'm hoping that they do commit to that because it could be dead. It's obviously everyone's talked about this forever since the trade happened. It's just like, why aren't they doing it? Why aren't they doing it? And that was going to be my like questions, and I wanted to talk more about it. But they did do it all game against the Clippers, so I think they are going to have more emphasis on it. I guess I just hope that I actually see it and that it happens, because that Kings game, it was like, well, what's the deal?
Yeah, they were executing it to perfection. It's something that, you said, we're not the first people to talk about how this has to be a part of their game. They did it. They executed. It was great. I think and Dame was just recently talking about how he loves being with Giannis because they now work out together. They shoot together. They're spending like tons of time together. They both are, serious competitors, and they know that they're going to spend more time together, and that it has to be through the 2 of them that they're going to find success. It has to be. So when you see that Clippers game, it was like, this is awesome. This is exactly what we're hoping for, and we're good to go. But that Kings game, I'm okay with them abandoning it, only because that game is not going to happen. If you're like doing a simulator, you're not going to get that same game, out of I'm not even going to throw out, how often you do a sim and get the same results. But I actually pulled some stats from that game just to kind of show you how insane that Kings game was. The Kings in the first half shot 72% from 3-point land. 72% from 3. It was absolutely ridiculous. They ended up shooting 68% overall for the game. Of our 3-point shooters, Lillard was 1 of 6, PC 1 of 7, AJ Green 1 of 4, and Beasley 3 of 11. And when I watched the beginning of that game, Harrison Barnes couldn't miss. Huter couldn't miss. I mean, it was like I couldn't even figure out what was happening, and I guarantee that entire team was like, I don't get it. Giannis is like, well, I'll keep playing my game, try to keep us in there. I'm sure you guys are going to get it figured out. It just didn't happen, and I think at just some point they just were like, all right, I don't understand. And I think that kind of jumps into one of my concerns is this. We have Brooke and we have Bobby and we have Giannis, who are guys that should be playing in the paint and imposing their size, and that's a huge part of their game. But like you look at that Kings game, and there was nobody in the paint, really. It was like they were all hanging out. Like Brooke is hanging out on the top of the key, and I get that he can shoot those shots, and there's the offensive, plan here. But it's like, I don't understand what's happening. You can't all be out there. You're not going to win it all back shooting threes when people are cold. Like, you're going to have to play better perimeter defense, and then you're going to have to find, high percentage points. And whatever you were doing, that was not it. It was just not what the game should have been. And that was a huge concern for me. And maybe it was just because they were losing, and maybe because the Kings were so hot that they had to go a different route. But I mean, anybody that watched the Clippers game and then the Kings game, I mean, you saw two completely different teams, two completely different coaching strategies. I'm hoping we see more of the Clippers strategy, that's for sure. But I don't know. They got to figure something out. When they're losing, they can't just fall apart like the way they did with the Kings. That's just not acceptable.
Yeah, to your point, in the Kings, like, so yeah, we're not making threes. What are you going to do? You're just give up or just keep chucking them, hoping they go in. But you look at the stats, the Kings out-rebounded us. They didn't just score more threes, they scored more in the paint too. So I mean, it's like they beat us everywhere in that game.
Right.
They had more steals, they had more assists, they had more fast break points. I mean, they dominated every facet of that game except for free throws. Like, they fouled us more than we fouled them.
Well, the thing that was weird too is, like, so Beasley, he was our best 3-point shooter of that group. He hit 3. But none of them looked good. Like, they all seemed to step off. Beasley's shots looked ugly. And, you could be watching a game and you could be like, oh, that's good. I can tell that's going in from 3 or something like that. At no point was I watching these shots being like, that's good. It's like, like, I didn't have the feeling, everything that Dame had seemed like it was half a foot short. I was always hitting the front of the rim. He never was shooting it long. It was always just a little bit off. And the thing that was strange about that is Doc wasn't making the adjustments that I thought he was going to make. He started playing Green a lot more. Gallinari wasn't playing much. And I'm not saying Gallinari is a good shooter necessarily. He's been able to make a couple of shots here and there. But when you see these people aren't playing, like, you have to be able to switch it up, because I don't know the final numbers for Gallinari, and he's not the answer. I'm not trying to say that by any stretch, but if these other guys are not hitting, because Green came in the first, he was Dame's backup, and then he started the second, but he wasn't feeling it. I mean, his shot was not there. So why not try Andre Jackson Jr. to see if he can play some better defense and let these guys get open? He had that monster dunk in the fourth, if you saw that.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that was awesome.
Unbelievable. But I just didn't see, like, trying to change it. I'm worried that Doc, as a veteran coach, comes in with a plan and is unwilling to make the change. I hope that's not the case, but I don't know. When you see these guys are cold, at least in the first half, yeah, you're down 20 at the first half, but I don't know if you saw that thing that 20 is the new 12. 20-point leads just aren't safe anymore. That's the time. Make a switch. See what's going on. Let's try something else. Let's try different. And I just didn't see it. And then the game got out of hand, and then you just kind of waved the white flag. And I don't know. That was a little disappointing for me.
Yeah, last week I praised Doc a little bit for making adjustments in game. I think maybe that was the first Clippers game. I don't know.
Yeah,
but I agree with you, and that's one of the things I kind of bouncing off of that, especially with Ajax. With some of these teams, we're just too slow. Like, it's, the Warriors are just running all over the place. The Heat, that game, maybe 3 weeks ago, whenever that was, they were just moving the ball so quick, moving off the ball, and we could not keep up with them. And the Kings were played fast. And we're just too slow. And I think some of we have to deal with the roster we have, but some of our guys are slow. I think, like, Jay Crowder is maybe one of the weak links when we play these quick teams that are running all over the court. I just don't think he can keep up with them. Lopez obviously isn't chasing perimeter guys, but depending on the lineup we're facing, like a small ball lineup or something like that, Lopez is kind of a vulnerable piece out there. And I don't know what it was with that Kings game, but Lopez wasn't really. Sabonis owned him all game.
Yeah.
So even, like, in the paint, Lopez wasn't getting it done like he normally does. So that was kind of disappointing to see. I mean, if that happens, I'm not sure what the backup, for a big defender is. I mean, Giannis, I guess, but I don't know.
Giannis and maybe Bobby. Doc talked about the problem that he had with the game is that when they were doing shoot around, they all kept talking about, we'll get on the plane, we'll go home after this game. And he's like, we were already talking about the end of the game. And he's like, why we got in the mentality that we could look past the Kings, which, is a great team in the West. He took blame for it. And, that's good to see a coach do that. But it's like, man, I really hope that was not true. I hope you were just making, a joke like them being in Cabo, because you don't go on this West Coast trip and then play the Kings, which is a great team with a lot of young players, and be like, oh, let's talk about our plane ride home. That, of course you're going to lose if that's the mentality. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And Lopez better get fired up at this next game, because not only was Sabonis owning him, Sabonis was dunking over him like he was nothing. Like he was just like, whatever, man, I'm just going to own you all day. And if I'm Lopez, I'm like, that's not happening. I can't let this young kid do this. I don't care who you are. I don't care you're an all-star. I'm not letting it happen all day. So I'm hoping we see a fired up team tomorrow. But man, they got to get their heads back to the goal at hand, which is to win some games and win this championship.
Yeah, and I'm hoping Doc can be preemptive with some of these adjustments. Like after seeing it a few times, it's like you don't always have to have the same starting lineup. I don't know if there's this thing about starting the game. Like I guess maybe it probably does matter to some of these guys, but also Jay Crowder is the guy I'm thinking of. Like he's not a good enough player to like demand a starting spot or to get all emotional about it. Or I'd be surprised like if it's a big problem that if Jay Crowder like just refuses to play off the bench or something like that.
Right.
Like I'm sure that's not the case. So I just, it seems like we've seen enough where like Jay Crowder should not start against the Clippers or the Kings or the Warriors. It was the Clippers game where I was like, why is Crowder starting? It's just like, to me, obviously PC should have started that game. It was just very clear. We've seen enough at this point. Crowder should not start against the Clippers, but maybe because PJ Tucker started that changed things or something about the matchup. But I guess it's just, I'm a little surprised that Crowder has started every single game, since Middleton has been out. And it's look, I mean, our starting lineup's awesome. Throwing anyone in is probably fine, but it just doesn't seem like he's looking at these matchups. And like I said, Crowder's not like a starting. It's not like you're taking out Middleton or someone for a matchup. You're taking out a guy who should be on the bench. He's only starting because Middleton's out. So if the matchup makes more sense to have PC start, or if you think we need to get younger and faster, throw in Ajax. Or first of all, just play Ajax a little bit.
Play Ajax. Okay. Exactly.
And I don't think Ajax needs to play every game, but these quick teams, you got to get some young guys who can keep up with them.
Yeah, he's fast. He brings energy. He's the type of guy that will, he's the championship year when PJ Tucker just brought that defense where he was just all up on everybody's business and they're just pestering them the whole time. I think Ajax has a little bit to that, and he could do that. You put him and Pat Bev together, and all of a sudden, these guards that are absolutely crushing us left and right. I mean, it was one of those things that under Griffin, it's like, okay, if you're a decent guard, you're going to have a huge night. I thought that changed, and then you see D'Angelo Russell go off for a freaking career game against us, and it's like, okay, the same thing is there. And the other thing is, Doc has been hanging his head on the fact that he's fixed PC. He said PC had these things and he had to work for it. And I told him he wasn't ready until he worked on these things, and he's come back, and I'm really proud of the way he's done blah, 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 blah. What about do the same thing with Crowder? When's the big Crowder game that we've been seeing? I don't see anything that's out there, and I'm not trying to knock him, but it's like, all right, well, if you were able to do something with PC, are you having this conversation with Crowder? He's a vet. He should be able to take the feedback and say, you got to start doing this stuff, or I'm lowering those minutes and I'm trying a younger guy. I'm going to try something else. I'm just not seeing it yet. I hope there's a plan, but yeah, I agree. Crowder, I don't know. I don't get it. He maybe he's just toying with some lineups, but I'd be happy to see him coming off the bench in certain situations than starting every game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because I'm more worried about the Miami Heat, for example, than maybe I shouldn't say I'm more worried about them than the Boston Celtics. But I'm like, let's just take Denver, who we wouldn't play unless we're in the championship. I like our matchup with Denver.
Yes,
I mean, obviously Denver's outstanding. I'm not saying like, yeah, it's automatic we're going to win, but I just feel like we're a better matchup with Denver than we are with like the Warriors and the Kings. And that's weird to say, kind of, because Denver's outstanding. But yeah, we're just slow with these teams that fly around. We're just not keeping up with them, and I'm worried we don't have the roster. I'm worried we don't have the answer, and so hopefully Doc can figure it out.
I hope so. I mean, that's the thing. You look at Denver. Jokic is always putting up points in the paint, and that's a huge thing. You have him and Aaron Gordon are always scoring in the paint. And I think that's what we need. You got to get Lopez to stay down there a little bit more often. And, he's a stretch big. I get it. That's part of what the role is. We have really great shooters. We don't need him to be out there nearly as much. Cycle it up. One of the notes I have is Bobby's been awesome in the paint. He's going after every rebound, but he can't do it by himself. You put him and Brook down there in some of these lineups, and yeah, now you got something. A lot of people are going to say, like, look, teams are going to live and die by the 3-point. And when they don't have it, like the Bucks didn't have it against the Kings, it's an easy game. Kings continue to shoot high percentage shots. They find their groove. Bucks can't hit a 3. Okay, well, you own them. That's it. They're going to either keep chucking it up and it's going to get way out of hand like it did, or, you're just going to keep this lead and just don't make these mistakes, and you should hold on. I think we're being too, for the way the guards are killing us, we're being too, we're respecting the 3 too much on some of these teams, and we just can't do that anymore.
Yeah, something we haven't seen yet, and I wouldn't expect to, but in the playoffs, I would hope that we do, is Giannis at the 5. So against the Kings, maybe you just have Giannis guarding Sabonis, and then you have basically 4 wings with him.
Yeah.
So again, Giannis, I'm sure he doesn't want to play the 5. It's going to be hard on his body. It's it's just difficult for him to do that and then go on the offensive end and be a freight train. So I could see why you're not going to do that much, but I think it's something that needs to be there in the playoffs, especially against these quick, smaller teams.
I agree. And I think that's the thing, I noticed too. It's nice having a Bucks team that's, in the conversation to be a championship team. But you gotta give it to some of these other teams that have these young, fast, athletic stars that are fun to watch. I mean, you look at the Pacers; they are fun to watch. The Knicks are a little bit like that. Cleveland, but at the same time, I don't know that those other teams are serious contenders. They're just energetic. I don't think that they could win a 7-game series, or if they did, they'll get lucky maybe on one. But yeah, look at Denver. We do match up. We do have similar styles, similar rosters. And outside of Jokic, I think we match up better than them everywhere. So I hope that we get there. And I think the same thing with Boston. Like you said, Boston is a team that is playing well. I don't trust Porzingis at all, and I think he potentially is going to be the reason that they lose. Tatum, I think, is still trying to find his shots. He's trying to be like a stat type guy, and Jaylen Brown is just losing respect, and so then he'll have big games from here and there. So, they're all great players, but I don't know. I just don't see it. And we've talked about it before. If Boston doesn't win, it's been a failed season. I don't care what happens to them. And so I'll appreciate the underdog of maybe they don't expect the Bucks to win, but I still think we have a shot.
Yeah, definitely have a shot. And each year goes by, Giannis gets older. We gotta take advantage. We gotta get back.
Absolutely.
So, and I would love to see Giannis Jokic championship. That's such an awesome NBA matchup, and I'm surprised I haven't heard more talk about it. I guess it's just been so negative on the Bucks on the national scene.
It's so negative on the Bucks. Yeah,
everyone's talking Celtics. Like Tatum, Jokic. Like is that a man? I mean, Jokic Giannis is more a direct. I guess he's the 5 and Giannis is a 4, but it's closer to a direct matchup with those two guys. And we each have won recently. I mean, these are the 2 clear best players in the NBA. I think most people would agree. It's Jokic and Giannis. And then whoever is third right now. So I haven't heard anyone talk about that. And that sounds like such an awesome, fun matchup. Whoever if you're for Denver, if you're Milwaukee, either way, it just seems like a great matchup that it's going to be so hard to get there. Both teams have to make the championship. It's really more on the Bucks for failing it the last couple of years. Last year, I guess. But yeah, I would love to see that. I really am hoping that happen. I was hoping that would happen last year. But yeah, we have another chance at it. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm sure that the NBA execs are not going to want Denver, Milwaukee as a series because of course they want the bigger cities. But whatever, good basketball has to beat how much fun you're having. And if that's what you worry about is what's the city going to be like during the finals, then I don't know. You're just missing the whole point of what we're doing here. So go to just hang out in Miami and hope for the best and have fun and party or watch really good basketball, because I agree Milwaukee Denver would be fantastic. And I don't know, maybe we'll get it.
On our Bucks concerns, I think we had everything unless you had more to say on you had guard troubles. I wasn't sure exactly what you meant there.
Same thing I've kind of touched on before. Earlier in the season, we were having problems. Anytime there was a decent guard, they were just going to go off on us. And then,
That's right.
the point of with the Lakers of here's D'Angelo Russell, who I think for most people kind of wrote him off as being like, he's just on the team and whatever. And then he just absolutely crushes us. And it's like, all right, I just can't keep doing this anymore. I don't know where the problem is. I get it. Beasley is not there for his defense. AJ Green's not there for his defense. But I don't know. We got to figure it out with these guards, or we're just going to get killed if we get matched up against, a Pacers team or even a Heat team that gets lucky or something like that. We got to fix it.
I don't remember what we did with Pat Bev that game specifically against the Lakers. I mean, I know he's been playing a lot. It seems like that's a perfect Pat Bev situation. Hey, this other guard, not a big guy, this other guard on the other team is like going off. Like, we need to get in his head. We need to be up in his face, like making it difficult for him. That's what Pat Bev does, right?
Yeah.
Was he guarding Russell directly one-on-one in that game much? I don't remember.
I don't remember him guarding him too much, but I think he nailed it right there. It's like you put Pat Bev on this guard, whoever's going off, or in advance that like it's going to be a Brunson game or something like that, and then go between him and Ajax. You got all these fouls to give. They pester the heck. These guys are going to get so frustrated in their head. They're going to start to make mistakes. They're going to start passing off open shots because they don't want to deal with it. That's what you need to do. And that I think that goes back to my problem with Doc. It's like, why can't you make that adjustment? You got Pat, who is super smart veteran, and maybe he doesn't have the stamina to go the full game or something like that. But then you bring in the young Ajax, who's all he wants to do is play. He's gonna probably get a ton of fouls, but who cares? That's kind of what you need him to do. Get in these guys' heads and shut them down, and get to the point where they're just frustrated. I really, really want to see that more. I don't know. I hope I see it.
Especially when the guy's going off. I mean, he couldn't miss. Like, he looked great.
Right.
So some of it was like, hey, that's a really good shot. What are you going to do about it? And what are you going to do about it is put Pat Bev in his face, guard him 94 feet. Don't let him get the ball. You do what teams do to Dame. Dame is often like not allowed to do anything because they double him up. Dame gives it up, and then we have like a 4-on-3. Why don't we do that against these guys who are going off? And by the way, I haven't really, in this West Coast trip, I don't recall us really blitzing much or doing that double. We were doing that a bunch right after Doc took over. We talked about it, and it seems like that's gone away a little bit.
I feel like he's been doing a lot more zone. I know in the Kings game, he started out man and then went to zone a lot earlier. But I've been seeing a lot more zone defense than I have. And maybe that was part of the problem. But yeah, you just got to get in these guards' faces. Can it be so simple as you just double the best player and make other people beat you?
Well, that's what they do against Dame all the time. Yeah. I mean, that's very common.
So just do the same thing. I mean, you're playing, I'll keep using the Knicks just as an example because Brunson kind of just kept going off when he played us. Okay, double Brunson. And then, you got Julius Randle, who, I don't know, he could be on or he could be off, but you put him in the paint against Brook. And then the rest of the Knicks, they got good players. I get it, but I'm happy to see us potentially get beaten by them than let Brunson put up 45 points and the rest of them all put up huge numbers. Like, shut down Brunson, take him out of the equation, and then see where it goes.
Yep. Especially when the guy's going off. It's like, you got to do something. You can't just let him keep going.
Absolutely.
So, okay. Those are our concerns. Hopefully they fix all of them. And let's have some fun now. I have no idea what you're going to say. Something about Giannis versus Bobby.
Yeah, so I've had what I think are kind of some fun observations. So I was watching the game yesterday. So Bobby Portis 6'10", right? And Giannis is 6'11". So they're similar size, right? They're both big dudes. Well, I'm watching the game. Bobby gets the ball and he goes to drive and he is just stuffed. Like, two guys get in his face. He has to do this little dinky dunk thing. He just can't get to the rim. It's got to be, a 5-foot shot or whatever that happens to be. And then on the flip side, you see the same type of play with Giannis. And they could have two guys ready to go. And Giannis not only is going to make it, he's going to dunk it in their face with so much force. I couldn't get over it. It's just a point of how amazing Giannis is to see him get in these situations where he can dunk it with, and not even just like he's just getting it in the basket. He is dunking with so much force. And on the flip side, you have Bobby Portis, another big dude, just can't do it. Giannis is built so differently. He really is the freak. And I just don't understand, is it because Bobby just doesn't have the same gift as Giannis, which obviously is a huge part of it, or has he not figured out how to be that role? Or is it just that much harder than I realize, and Giannis is just doing stuff that people will never ever be able to do again? Because the difference is just glaring. Two guys the same way, and one can get to the basket and the other one just cannot.
Yeah, I would guess it's the latter, because I don't see many guys throughout the NBA doing that, 6'10", 6'11", 7 feet, like no matter how big they are, not many guys do that. And that's why people say he's the Shaq of today, because he's just so dominant down there. Like nobody else.
He really is. That is the ultimate comparison, because, there'll be guys that'll get dunks and stuff like that. But, just even in that beginning of that Kings game when they were down multiple times, did Giannis just, completely own a dunk and just get over some guy. And, Bobby's got great touch and his game is different. I get that, but it's just so funny to be able to see, almost the exact play back to back. And, Bobby just gets stopped and has to settle for a different shot. And Giannis is like, yeah, try to stop me. It's just not going to happen.
So do you want to see Giannis take more threes, or do you want him to never shoot a three?
Oh, that's a tough question. When I was at the game, I know Giannis can shoot threes. I know he can. He's got his shot looks good. When he's in games, I may have mentioned this before, he takes way too long when he's shooting a three. He doesn't just settle and just trust the shot. I guess between the two options, I'm going to go controversial and say shoot more threes, because I think it just might open up the offense a little bit. If he's not shooting them at all, that takes away a huge part of the game. And they, there's games in the past where we would all, clench our teeth and roll our eyes, and here comes a Giannis three and he just misses badly or something like that. But there's also multiple times where he's just absolutely draining a three like nobody's business. And it's like, all right, well, I think he is a better shooter than Embiid from three. And Embiid still gets, 4 chances to shoot a three. Maybe that's what we need from Giannis, is maybe just give him some more shots and open it up a little bit. And if they're really going to just let him take the shot, maybe he'll kill you with it. Especially at that Kings game, I couldn't stay up for the whole thing, but I hope he had better chances. What's it going to hurt at that point when no one else can do it?
Yeah, I guess get your practice in when we're down 30. It's not a bad idea. His shot does look pretty good. You're right. Like a lot of these big guys that just looks terrible. It's a bad shot. It's like line drive or whatever, but it does look like a good shot. And actually, I think he's been like 50% since the All-Star break, or I forget the exact stat, but something like that. It resonated with me because it has looked, he's made a lot. It seems like he's made a lot of his shots the past couple of weeks. But I think you're right. It really will help if he can make that enough for people to want to guard it.
Right.
They're not guarding it right now. And that's only going to change if he shoots. First of all, he has to make some, but also shoot more than, 1 or 2 a game. So that's a big ask. I'm not sure that's going to happen magically in the next month or two, but he has been shooting better. So I guess I would have the same answer, but I am also kind of hesitant, because when he misses it, I'm just like, damn, just go down there and dunk it.
Right. But I guess if you get to the point where, they respect his shot enough that they don't double Dame, and it's like, okay, well, either let Giannis take it or leave Dame open. And if you don't leave Dame open, then Beasley or Middleton, if Middleton comes back, is wide open. It's like, if you can get in those situations, that's what you need. Or maybe they pull someone off the paint and there's Brooke or Bobby down there for an easy layup. Like, it just opens it up so much more. You got to let him shoot. You got to let him try some of these. If it's off, have a signal to be like, nope, 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 stop, don't do it. It's not working tonight. And I mean, he needs to kind of do that with all the players, but yeah, let him give him 4 or 5 a game. Let's see what happens.
And that's like a key difference between him and Jokic, and maybe why there's less talk, comparison between them, or like why Giannis is not in the MVP race or whatever. Maybe a part of it is, Jokic has that 3-pointer, and he doesn't shoot it a ton, I don't think, but like every time he shoots, I think it's going in.
Yeah,
like I do. Especially if the shot clock is like at 1 second and he's 35 feet away.
Right.
That's like a guaranteed basket. But yeah, that is one big difference between him and Jokic, where Jokic can play that 2-man game and pop out for the 3-pointer, or if you're going to just leave him wide open, he'll just shoot and make it. And Giannis is being left wide open, and he just doesn't make it enough. So that would be huge if you could do that, obviously. But we've seen moments of it the past few weeks, so hopefully that can become something. And you know what, for him, as he gets older, he's not going to be able to do what he's doing now, like forever, or like when he's 35, I'm not sure what that's going to look like. So I think he knows that. I think that's why he hasn't given up on it. But I think he's going to need to do that.
Yeah, I think he's been working on his mid-range. I think he's been working on his 3-point shot. He still wants to play for a while. And yeah, it's one of those things. Athleticism is not going to stick with you forever. LeBron is 40, 41, whatever age he is right now. You can't do the same things. He can still dunk. It's not going to be a huge part of his game. He's got to open it up. So I think Giannis is aware of that. I think he's going to change a lot. Speaking of Giannis, though, I did want to talk about something else that, so Giannis, if you're watching some of these games, when he breaks out his pink shoes, those I think are becoming iconic, shoes in the NBA. You think of the Jordan, red and white, Air Jordans from back in the day, or Jordan even with the all black, Giannis with his pink, Zoom Freaks with the white swoosh it's getting up there to be one of like the most all-time iconic sneaker in the NBA. There's not a single player that you look at that you see their sneakers and you're like, oh wow, that's awesome, or that's relates to the player. And Giannis has been wearing those pink ones more and more. You can't buy them on Nike right now. They're known for him. He's wearing them more. I think he's aware of it too. I think it's given him some extra power. You see some of these other players that wear pink shoes. It doesn't have the same look, the same feel. It's becoming his like signature thing, and I love it. I think it's fantastic.
So, are you saying that those shoes are not available?
Correct. You can design your own Giannis Zoom Freak shoes on Nike, but not that color. Not that you can't figure that combination out.
Is that a common thing in the NBA where stars will have their specific shoes that are not sold? It's just theirs.
That I don't know. I know that like when Robin Lopez was on the Bucks, he had these special shoes that he had. I'm sure a lot of them have shoes that maybe at the end of the season, they're in a way promoting them throughout the year, and then they'll be available later. I'm not 100% sure, but they're the ones that they stand out every time you see them, and I think they're going to be one shoe that I think he might stick with for a very long time.
So his daughter's name is always on that shoe, or is that a newer thing? Or
I'm not sure.
The daughter's name was on the shoe in this last game.
Yes, I saw that too. I don't know. I don't know enough about his shoe choices, because I mean, why does he go to the pink and then he switches it up to something else and then wears pink back to back? I don't know. And I don't know if he's still giving out his shoes after every game or not. I honestly don't know the answer to these questions, but I'm excited. I think he's got a good shoe, and I just think it's really going to go up there as an all timer. I'm calling it right now.
I hope you're right. There are good shoes on him.
That's right.
Yeah, what do you got on Marquez Johnson?
So he was just having an absolute ball during the Kings game. If you didn't get a chance to listen to him, he was cracking himself up. He had numerous Airplane, the movie references that he was just throwing out there trying to make himself laugh. He was referencing a old Curtis Blow song, and he was just having he seemed like the guy that had 2 cocktails at the bar and was just like jamming to the music and having the best time. And it was just so funny because the Bucks were playing like crap. And he was just like, oh, yeah, this is great. This is having fun. Just, I just thought it was absolutely hilarious that he was having the time of his life despite an absolutely horrendous performance by the Bucks. It just made me laugh so much.
Yeah, he definitely kept it light as the blowout was just getting worse in that fourth quarter when it was like it's over, garbage time. The subs came in, and yeah, he was definitely having fun with it.
Yeah,
which
it was good.
What else? I'd rather you go that route than depressed. Like,
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's great. I want more of it. If anything, I mean, he sometimes gets on his little tangents of his stories, and they're fantastic. This one, he was just like, all right, well, you know what? I'm just going to throw out some stuff because this game's getting out of hand, and we'll see where it goes. The other thing I wanted to mention was with NBA League Pass, one of the things I love about it is you get the in-court cameras. You know what I'm talking about? So you get to see like the halftime shows and the timeouts and stuff like that. So Ashley and I were watching the game the other day, and I can't remember which game it was actually, but there was a woman who was shooting a bow and arrow with her feet while she was also doing like handstands and back bends and all this kind of stuff. And it's funny because every time I've watched some sort of like halftime show, it's always something like that. It's a person that paints a picture upside down. It's somebody doing some acrobat. And I go, why is this a big draw for NBA halftimes? I just don't understand it. And then so Ashley was like, oh, well, the NBA halftime is the new circus. And I think she might have nailed it because it kind of is. It's the weirdest things that you would see at a circus are happening at an NBA halftime. I don't know who's planning this thing. It's absolutely hilarious. And I mean, check it out. Next time you're watching, stick for the halftime and tell me that what you're about to watch isn't going to be something that you're going to see in the circus.
That's perfect. I mean, I thought you were going to mention the halftime. I think it was the Kings game. And it was someone who had like a little dog with them. But before the dog came out, he was like doing like handstands like on pedestals on like basketball, and then then he would like take one hand off and he had like one hand on the basketball. I mean, it was like impressive. Like,
sure. Oh yeah.
This is difficult to do, I imagine. So yeah, he was doing all this kind of crazy acrobatic stuff. And then the dog came out and the dog so the guy put out like 2 balls on the ground and the dog got on one of the balls and was kind of like staying on the ball as it was like rolling a little bit, and he got himself next to the other ball and then jumped onto the other ball.
Oh,
standing on that ball. So he like trained the dog to do something. It was awesome. It was like, this took a lot of time, I'm sure. Like, first of all, you had all your training to like, balance on the basketballs and whatever else he was balancing on, this other stuff. Then train the dog to do, go on the basketball and stay balanced and whatever else he did with the dog. He had the dog come up on him and stuff like that. I was like, this has got to be a lot of time. Like, I'm impressed. This is great. And
do you think he trained the dog first and then said, I got to find a way to get into it?
Do something.
Or you think he figured out how to balance and then he got a dog? He's like, well, this dog's got to be a part of something. Because it's funny because it's the same one as the woman shooting the bow and arrow with her feet. It's like, I don't even know how you figure out you do that. Like, any chance she's like shooting the bow and arrow and she's like, I suck. I can't do this. Maybe if I like stood on my hands and used my feet instead, I might get good. And it was. And then she's like, oh, wow, I got a career. I would love some backstory on how these people figure this stuff out because it's truly amazing. And then the other thing is like the upside down painting, though. I don't know that I'm that impressed by it. I have to say, I want you to watch for that one. It's a real thing. Okay. Yes.
It doesn't sound as interesting.
Yeah, I mean they paint something, and first of all, if you're watching someone paint a picture, it's really not that entertaining. Sorry,
exactly.
It's not. You're looking to fast forward to the end and see the reveal and see what they're trying to do. So when the reveal is like, hey, let me take this thing that looks like absolute just abstract garbage, flip it upside down, and it's a picture of a dog, you're like, oh yeah, just could have painted a dog. I mean,
you did that.
Yeah, like, is it impressive that you did it upside down? I don't know. Maybe I'm not the audience for that, but just paint the dog, and then don't hire that guy to paint a dog for halftime. Like, nobody's paying attention to that. Come on, like anything else at this point. Come on.
Yeah, that's low grade circus.
It's low grade circus.
Well, I was at the Guinness Book of World Records Museum in Los Angeles, and I saw one of the world records that was set. It was actually set recently, maybe by this woman, was the world record of like distance of shooting a bow and arrow with your feet.
Oh,
so perhaps this person was like, I want to set a Guinness Book of World Record. I think that happened. I think some people are like, I'm going to do a Guinness Book of World Record. They like figure out which one they're going to do.
Yes, I think you're right.
And so that's my guess. That was her start, or maybe she was really into bow and arrow, or, she's like, I'm going to do something. I'm never going to be able to shoot the furthest one with like my hands. Like that's impossible. But with my feet, I could do that. Does that. And then it's like, well, what am I going to do with this skill? I took all this time to learn this skill. I got in the book. I'm in the museum. How do I monetize this? So I think we should look it up. I bet you it's the same person.
I will look it up. She looked kind of young. She was definitely in shape. I mean, you have to be if you're able to do that. But I mean, being that young too, it's like, at what point do you realize like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to like, that's my thing. I'm going to just look at the Guinness Book of World Records, and I'm going to get really good at gymnastics and archery and combine them in the weirdest way I possibly can. And then that's my thing. So the other thing is, these performers have to get paid for the halftime, right? I can't imagine it's much though, right? It's not televised unless you have League Pass. So only a handful of people are really paying attention to what you're doing. This is probably low stakes, and I don't know.
Yeah, probably low stakes. It is a better halftime than when we saw the Bucks like 5 years ago, and it was the George Clinton band and the Funkadelics.
That's right.
And it was George Clinton was up there, but not doing much.
He just is there to get top billing and then be like, George Clinton over there, just having a hot dog. But he's here. Trust us.
So and I love live music, but I do prefer the circus shows to that level of live music.
Yeah, I hope anybody that hears this that is one of those halftime performers knows that we're very supportive of you. I just find it extremely fascinating on how you got the job, how you learned how to do it. I would definitely watch some sort of documentary on that. If they could take all that, maybe that's a good idea to actually, we'll create a documentary and we'll just follow these halftime acts, get the backstory, see the performance.
That's a good idea.
See the fails. Yeah. I mean, who wouldn't watch that, right? At least 2 people would watch it. So that's all you need.
Minimum. Yeah. All right. Okay. Do you have anything else for us today?
No, I think, we got the Philly game on Thursday. I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully we get some lineup changes. We get some new energy. We're back at home. We got to have something coming, or else we're going to see some skidding in the standings, and that's not going to be good. You don't want to play from behind too often. So hoping for a get-right game tomorrow. Yeah,
no Middleton again in the next game. Hopefully the following game he's back. It seems like it's been long enough. And, he should get some reps before the playoffs too. I don't want him just to jump into the playoffs.
Absolutely.
So yeah, hopefully we're talking Middleton next time. So yeah, subscribe and rate us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. Email us at doubledribbledbucks@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at podddb, and we will see you next time. Until then, go Bucks.